as fast as possible, 24 hours. You can't have a system that will take a year to upgrade.
We designed the system for is actually to be able to withstand the extreme max in terms of cold, so minus 40, minus 45. We should be able to land on a road full packed with ice, be able to turn around in 10 minutes.
This revolutionary system is why we do not talk about fighter generations at Saab anymore.
For years, the Saab JAS-39 Gripen existed in the margins of global air power conversations, overshadowed by larger and louder combat aircraft that dominated headlines and procurement budgets. In defense forums and strategy debates, it was frequently cast as the lightweight stepping into a heavyweight contest, efficient but limited, agile but outmatched, sophisticated yet somehow secondary. The label persisted long enough to become conventional wisdom. Then the exercise at Red Flag, Alaska forced a pause. On the opening phase of those drills, Swedish sources claimed their Gripens achieved 10 air-to-air kills without suffering a single loss. Among the aircraft reportedly defeated were 1 Eurofighter Typhoon and 5 F-16 Fighting Falcons, with several engagements said to have occurred before opposing pilots even realized they had been targeted. In one close-range scenario, a single pilot was credited with downing 5 F-16s alone. The United States Air Force did not publicly confirm those figures, but the performance was notable enough that Sweden received another invitation to participate. Even if only part of the account reflects what unfolded, it challenged assumptions that had hardened over decades. To understand why the outcome unsettled analysts, it is necessary to revisit the story that shaped perceptions of the Saab JAS-39 Gripen long before it faced scrutiny in multinational exercises. On paper, the aircraft appeared straightforward to classify and, for some, easy to dismiss. It flew with a single engine in an era when twin-engine fighters were often associated with greater survivability and raw thrust. It carried less internal fuel than heavier rivals and could not rival the payload statistics that dominate comparison charts. Its design emphasized efficiency, rapid turnaround, and controlled lifecycle costs rather than brute force. In circles where size and power are equated with dominance, those priorities were interpreted as limitations. The Gripen was frequently described as a practical solution for smaller nations, a capable platform for air policing and territorial defense, but rarely mentioned alongside aircraft marketed as icons of air superiority. That perception endured in part because its competitors were supported by powerful narratives. The F-15 Eagle built its identity as a pure air superiority machine with a combat record often described as unmatched. The F-16 Fighting Falcon accumulated decades of operational history across multiple conflicts, flown by numerous air forces from the Middle East to Central Asia. The Eurofighter Typhoon emerged as Europe's technological statement in the late Cold War, designed to counter advanced Soviet aircraft and backed by a consortium of major industrial powers. Each platform carried political influence, industrial scale, and a record of deployments that reinforced its stature. Against that backdrop, the Gripen's quieter profile seemed to confirm the hierarchy. It was engineered for dispersed operations, designed to launch from short runways, and optimized for maintainability by small ground crews. Those qualities appealed to countries focused on resilience and budget discipline rather than expeditionary reach. Yet, exercises like Red Flag, Alaska suggested that efficiency and modern sensor integration could translate into combat effectiveness in ways not always captured by raw specifications. When a jet long portrayed as modest begins to generate results that challenge established reputations, it forces a broader reassessment. And as nations weigh consequential defense choices, including those with vast airspace to protect, the lesson is difficult to ignore. Sweden's strategic environment shaped an aircraft that never sought the spotlight. For generations, the country maintained neutrality and remained outside NATO, building its defense posture around self-reliance rather than alliance projection. It had not fought a major modern war, and there were no widely broadcast combat narratives elevating its fighter program to global prominence. The Saab JAS-39 Gripen was conceived for a nation with limited resources, vast geography, and a doctrine centered on deterring and repelling incursions into its own airspace. From that context, many analysts drew a predictable conclusion. The aircraft would be efficient, affordable, and well-suited for border defense, yet unlikely to outclass the elite fighters fielded by larger powers. That assessment felt logical, and over time it hardened into accepted wisdom. Then came an exercise designed to test assumptions under pressure. Red Flag, Alaska, organized by the United States Air Force, aimed to replicate the intensity and complexity of modern air warfare without crossing into actual conflict. Pilots faced dense threat environments shaped by electronic warfare, constrained support, shifting objectives, and relentless operational tempo. Weaknesses were exposed quickly, and success depended on coordination, situational awareness, and disciplined execution. In 2006, Sweden entered that arena with the Gripen assigned to the Red Team, cast as the adversary. The opposition included F-16 Block 50s, Eurofighter Typhoons, and the F-15C Eagle, aircraft long associated with air dominance. Expectations for the Swedish detachment were measured. What unfolded challenged that outlook. Rather than relying on constant radar emissions and centralized airborne warning, Swedish pilots exploited the Gripen's advanced data link architecture. Within a formation, one aircraft would briefly activate its radar, gather targeting information, and transmit that data instantaneously to the others. The remaining jets stayed electronically silent, reducing their detectability while maintaining a shared and comprehensive picture of the battle space. Situational awareness became distributed instead of concentrated, allowing the formation to operate as an integrated network rather than isolated platforms. According to Swedish accounts, the opening phase produced 10 air-to-air kills with no Gripen losses. Among the aircraft reportedly defeated were 1 Eurofighter Typhoon and 5 F-16 Block 50s. In a close-range engagement, a single Gripen pilot was credited with downing 5 F-16s, a result that contradicted assumptions drawn from raw performance metrics alone. Beyond the headline numbers, another detail carried operational weight. The Gripen was the only participant to complete every scheduled sortie across all weather conditions, underscoring reliability in sustained operations. Skepticism followed, as it often does in competitive environments. Exercises can be shaped by scenario design and reporting perspective, yet subsequent engagements with Norway's F-16s added credibility. In a series of encounters, 3 Swedish Gripens faced 5 Norwegian F-16s. The results were recorded as 5-0, 5-0, and 5-1 in Sweden's favor. These outcomes were acknowledged by a NATO ally, reinforcing the argument that the earlier performance was not simply an isolated claim. Even so, critics maintain that exercises are not war. Simulated engagements cannot replicate every variable of combat, from political constraints to the psychological weight of live weapons. That lingering doubt persisted until Sweden made a historic strategic shift. In March 2024, after more than 2 centuries of neutrality, Sweden joined NATO as its 32nd member. The transition from partner to full ally moved swiftly from ceremony to operational reality. Within a day of accession, Gripens flew missions under NATO command. By April 2025, they deployed to Poland as part of the alliance's enhanced air policing mission, operating alongside British Eurofighter Typhoons and conducting real intercepts of Russian aircraft approaching Allied airspace. These were not scripted scenarios, but missions shaped by genuine geopolitical tension. The aircraft demonstrated reliability, adaptability, and steady effectiveness without spectacle. Beyond Sweden, those developments resonated in Canada, where Ottawa had committed to purchasing 88 F-35s from Lockheed Martin and had already received the first deliveries. The F-35 promised stealth, deep strike capability, and integration with United States forces. Yet shifting political currents, including renewed trade tensions and tariff threats from Washington, prompted debate about strategic dependence. Saab responded with an alternative proposal centered on 72 Gripens and 6 GlobalEye airborne early warning aircraft, coupled with a full production line in Canada, significant job creation, technology transfer, and domestic control over upgrades. For a nation defined by vast territory, Arctic pressures, and the need for dispersed operations, the model carried strategic logic as well as economic weight. In Canada, the debate carried a historical undertone that reached back more than 6 decades. In 1959, Ottawa canceled the Avro Aero program, formerly known as the CF-105, terminating what had been one of the most ambitious fighter projects of its time. Thousands of engineers and skilled workers were displaced, and many eventually relocated to the United States, where some contributed to NASA and the Apollo program. The decision marked more than the end of an aircraft. It signaled a retreat from large-scale domestic aerospace ambition and left a lasting imprint on the national psyche. Decades later, the prospect of assembling the Saab JAS-39 Gripen in Canada with full technological access reopened that conversation. It was no longer only about replacing aging fighters. It was about whether Canada wished to rebuild deeper industrial sovereignty and reclaim elements of technological control that had once slipped away. Other nations offered examples of what such partnerships might achieve. Brazil pursued a similar arrangement with the Gripen, sending engineers to Sweden, integrating local suppliers into production, and gradually cultivating a broader technology ecosystem around the program. Export opportunities followed, including interest from Ukraine and attention towards Saab's GlobalEye airborne early warning platform from European partners. A Canadian production line could position Ottawa not merely as a buyer, but as a participant in a wider export network. potentially generating long-term economic returns instead of relying exclusively on foreign supply chains. Cost, however, remained a central variable that no government could ignore. In 2012, IHS Janes Aerospace and Defense Consulting released a comparative study of fighter operating expenses that cut through years of branding. The Gripen C and D variants averaged roughly $4,700 per flight hour, a figure that placed them well below many competitors. The FA-18 Super Hornet ranged between $11,000 and $24,000, depending on configuration. The Dassault Rafale hovered around $6,500, while the Eurofighter Typhoon approached $18,000. Estimates for the F-35A varied widely, with figures from Allied air forces ranging from the low 20s to well above $30,000 per hour. More recent Saab data suggested the newer Gripen E and F averaged approximately $22,100 per hour, while comparable estimates place the F-16V higher and the F-35A exceeding $46,000 under certain accounting methods. Methodologies differ and sustainment costs evolve, yet across multiple assessments, the same pattern persisted. The Gripen consistently ranked among the lowest cost fighters in its category. Those numbers translated into operational consequences. Lower hourly costs enable pilots to accumulate more flight time, strengthening proficiency that often proves decisive in combat. Higher sortie generation rates expand readiness. In practical terms, multiple Gripen missions could be flown within the maintenance window required for a single high-end stealth sortie, depending on mission demands. Training pipelines broaden and commanders retain flexibility without straining budgets. As financial comparisons circulated, the conversation inevitably expanded beyond engineering spreadsheets and into the realm of geopolitics. When the United States ambassador to Canada publicly cautioned that withdrawing from the F-35 program could affect cooperation within NORAD, the statement was delivered in diplomatic language, yet its strategic undertone was unmistakable. Fighter procurement is never a purely technical decision. It binds nations into industrial ecosystems, intelligence sharing frameworks, and operational doctrines that can last for generations. Within Canada, former Royal Canadian Air Force leaders reinforced that perspective, warning that operating two separate fighter fleets would multiply infrastructure costs, divide maintenance pipelines, and require parallel training systems for pilots and ground crews. Standardization, they argued, reduces friction over time. A single platform simplifies logistics, streamlines command structures, and strengthens interoperability with the United States, Canada's closest defense partner and the other pillar of continental air defense under NORAD. At the same time, capability distinctions sharpened the national debate. The F-35 was designed as a fifth-generation aircraft built around stealth, sensor fusion, and advanced electronic warfare. Its strength lies in penetrating contested airspace, striking high-value targets, and feeding real-time intelligence into a networked battlespace. It represents an aircraft optimized for coalition operations in environments where adversaries deploy layered air defenses and sophisticated radar systems. The Saab JS-39 Gripen reflects a different design philosophy. It emphasizes air policing, territorial defense, distributed data sharing, and rapid turnaround from austere bases. Its architecture allows for upgrades without external approval, and its operating model prioritizes resilience under conditions where infrastructure may be limited or targeted. In essence, the comparison is not simply between two jets, but between two strategic postures. Gradually, the discussion narrowed to fundamental priorities. Should Canada invest primarily in deep strike capability that integrates seamlessly into allied expeditionary missions abroad, reinforcing NATO commitments and multinational operations? Or should it concentrate on defending its vast Arctic and maritime approaches with maximum sustainability, ensuring persistent presence across immense distances in extreme weather conditions? Does closer dependence on allied technology provide security through integration, or does sovereign control over source code, upgrades, and supply chains offer greater long-term stability? In an era of shifting trade relationships and unpredictable political cycles, these considerations extend well beyond tactical performance. Fleet size added another dimension. A smaller number of highly advanced aircraft may deliver cutting-edge capability, but would that force provide sufficient coverage across Canada's enormous northern expanse? Conversely, could a larger fleet of lower-cost fighters generate steadier daily patrols, higher pilot flight hours, and more consistent readiness? Procurement timelines tighten the stakes further. Delays risk capability gaps as aging aircraft approach retirement, yet rushed commitments lock in financial and strategic alignments that may endure for 30 or 40 years. Ultimately, the choice before Ottawa transcends hardware specifications. It will shape how Canada patrols its skies, balances alliance obligations, sustains its aerospace workforce, and defines its strategic autonomy in a security environment that grows more contested with each passing year.